Hello, book readers. This is the B-Side Book Reviews, and today we are going to launch out into the great blue wide open skies with one of the most famous fighter pilots in the history of the world. Yes, Manfred von we known as the Red Baron. Yes, the Red Baron. The guy who makes all that frozen pizza. The guy who used to fight with Snoopy all the time. In fact, there was a song that came out in the 60s called Snoopy and the Red Baron. Catchy tune. Actually, there's been a couple of movies about the Red Baron. There was one in 1971, which I have not seen, but there was also one that came out in 2008, and I would recommend that one. But first of all, I would recommend The Red Fighter Pilot, which is the story of the Red Baron, told by none other than the Red Baron. So, I got my red shirt on. I don't have that many red shirts. All my red shirts say Texas Rangers on them, but this is Texas Instruments. And I got my red coffee cup, kind of. So, let's get all fighter pilot. I'm going to put my leather jacket on here, and if I can. Oh, there we go. Get my collar up, look cool. Get my shades on. Find my book. All right. I'm getting really hot, by the way. So, let's look into The Red Fighter Pilot, the story of the Red Baron. The self-told story of perhaps the only enemy fighter pilot any of us English-speaking people can call by name, or at least by his nickname. Yes, the Red Baron, Manfred von Richthofen was his name. And yes, he was a real baron, and he did fly a red plane. Now, good old Manfred starts his story with his humble beginnings as a cavalry officer in World War I. And he describes his action on the Eastern Front as quite boring. However, better things were in store for our dashing young soldier, and he soon found himself as an observer in the two-seater observing planes in the German army. Of course, as we all know, Manfred went on to become the most famous soldier in all of World War I. Probably the only soldier most people can recall, with the exception of maybe Sergeant York, of course. Yeah. With 80 recorded down planes, the Red Baron was the most successful, the most feared, and the most respected fighter pilot in the war. Yes, 80 men died trying to end that spree of the bloody Red Baron of Germany. That's from a song, by the way. Now, his success, however, came crashing down in flames when Canadian Roy Brown shot him down. And you thought it was Snoopy, now didn't you? Well, after poor Manfred crashed, he was killed by Australian ground soldiers. Now, his famous red plane was then torn apart by souvenir freaks and put on eBay, or whatever they did back in those days. You know, that part wasn't covered in his autobiography. Who would have thought? Wow. Shot down by Roy Brown. That sounds kind of like a song in itself. Shot down Roy Brown. For some reason, I've always been fascinated by the Red Baron. Yes, I've always kind of looked at him as the Tom Cruise Maverick Top Gun pilot of World War I. Flying a lot slower, of course, but no less daring. Now, when I was a kid growing up, the little I knew of this guy was what I heard in the Snoopy and the Red Baron song. And the Red Baron Hot Wheels car I have. Now, I always pictured him as this older, Vincent Price-looking guy with a pointed helmet and a handlebar mustache who barked out threats in some kind of Boris Karloff growl. Yes, I never really thought of him as some young guy who never made it past his 25th birthday. And I figured the Baron part of it just was a cool nickname he picked up in his frat house or something like that. I didn't realize he was a real Baron. Until later. For some reason, I've always thought of the fighter pilots of World War II as noble sportsmen who found respect among their enemy. Maybe I got this from the scene in the Red Baron movie where he flies over a funeral of a fallen enemy pilot and tosses a wreath into the man's grave. Okay, Manfred never mentions this in his book. More than likely, it never happened. Hollywood stuff. However, he did mention chatting it up with an enemy pilot while on the ground after they had both been shot down. Now, I have my doubts, though, that they broke out the booze like they did in the movie. Once again, probably just more Hollywood. I mean, who carries booze when they're flying off into battle? I would hope they don't. At least that beats pulling out their weapons and trying to kill each other. Now, in the movie 1917, a whole different tale was told when a shot-down German pilot pulls out a knife and kills an English soldier who just saved him from his burning plane. I guess that's war, I suppose. Judging by his writing, I'm guessing our Baron considered himself to be a bit of a sportsman of the air. And all that hand-to-hand, up-close and personal fighting going on down there on the ground was just, well, so uncivilized. Yes, those warriors of the skies were the valiant gentlemen of the war. Now that might be the way fighter pilots still see themselves today. Now, even though I've heard that Manfred von Richthofen was in reality a bit of a bore, I'll just betcha he scored with the ladies. After all, the nickname Red Baron would have probably done it for a lot of women. And even though German politics were a bit questionable, not to mention a whole lot psycho during the two world wars, you've got to admit that those German soldiers were sharp dressers. Cool uniforms, dude. Achtung! Or Achtung! Or Achtung! Something like that. Okay, so maybe Manfred's writing wasn't quite as interesting as some, but he did try to bring the dog fights to life. He went into detail on the altitudes that they flew and how they would drop down on their enemies like leopards jumping on their prey from the high tree limbs. That was kind of cool. But what I did find intriguing was the joy he seemed to take in his job. Yeah, intriguing and disturbing all at the same time. Where some might describe the horrors of war, Manfred seems to be having a ball. He treated the war as a game more than a tragedy, and would use phrases like, "It gave me great pleasure," and so on. He never really gave the impression of a guy who was in the middle of one of the bloodiest wars in history. He always called his missions going hunting, as if he were on a hunting holiday. And confidence never escaped him either. Of course, when you're taking to the skies in a, by today's standards, Stone Age death trap, armed with machine guns that were well known for jamming to, do battle against people whose only purpose for being there was to shoot you down in flames, well, maybe a little confidence, would probably be quite beneficial. Such was not a game for the meek and faint-hearted. As his mentor would tell him, "I have an Englishman for breakfast." Well, I guess a Canadian had old Manfred for lunch. Now, I've always heard Manfred was personally a bit of a bore, and by reading his book, I can see how he just might have been such. Now, I'm not saying the book was a bore, but I would have liked a few more details about, I don't know, partying with the local babes or something like that. In the movie, he certainly went out after the local women. Well, one anyway. Of course, that's what I want to hear about. I want to hear about him cruising around on a motorcycle like Tom Cruise did in Top Gun. Yep, they had motorcycles back then. Well, kind of. Okay, maybe I'm feeling this way because the last autobiography I read covered the lead singer of Motorhead, Lemmy, who left no subject unturned. Oh no. Perhaps Mr. Richthofen could have shared a few more feelings he experienced when he blew men out of the air and sent them down in flames to meet an agonizing death. Maybe he could have even talked about the fear he felt or the anger he felt toward those who were in the air, whose sole purpose was to put an end to his illustrious career. Now, the worst name he ever called these enemy pilots was rascal. Oh, those rascals. Come on, Manfred! You can use stronger language than that. Then again, he was a baron. So I'm guessing he was far too sophisticated to let his true emotions shine. Oh, those rascals. Rascals! Who knows? Maybe I would have liked to know Manfred. I probably would have started calling him Manfred Man and asked him if he was blinded by the light. Okay, you have to be pretty old to get that one. I also have a feeling that he might have been able to score with the ladies a little more than I could. After all, he had that baron thing going on. And for an added bonus, he had a plane. A red plane. One note, though, he did mention several times of a group of enemy fighter pilots who he called the Anti-Richthofen Squadron. Not his fan club, I'm guessing. Now, I suppose in the world of fighter pilots, when you actually have a group of enemy pilots who have banded together with the sole purpose of blasting you out of the sky and sending you to an atrocious death, well, you've made it! You're famous. volume probably, but hey. The Red Fighter Piolet, the story of the Red Baron told by, well, the Red Baron. Not very long, it's only like 160 pages. And for an added bonus, there's lots of cool pictures to browse through. Pretty cool, huh? Now, I'm sure there are more in-depth books concerning the Red Baron, but are they told by the Red Baron himself? I think not. Okay, so if you read the book, you might want to watch the movie too. The 2008 Red Baron movie is certainly worth your time. Kind of brings a little more life to it. Read the book, watch the movie. You've got to think about what these guys were up against back in those days. Here they were in those, by today's standards, ancient flying machines. And they're flying. They got the wind blowing on them. They're flying. They're looking around for enemies. They're shooting their guns. You got the guys coming down. You got them coming up from the left, from the right. Whoa. Talk about a rush. That's been a wild experience. Can you imagine being on the ground watching that? That would be cool. Pretty awesome. Anyway. The Red Baron. Now back in the 70s, my brother and I kind of got a little bit into the Red Baron, and he made this model of a car. It was kind of a hot rod. It wasn't a plane, it was a Red Baron car. It had like a, I'm guessing it's somebody's idea. If the Red Baron was a car, this is what he would look like. Had the helmet with a little spike on top and had machine guns on the side. It looked like something out of the movie Death Race 2000. Now the model has been long gone. We probably destroyed it. However, we also have a Red Baron Hot Wheel car. It looks pretty much the same. Still got that somewhere. And I was thinking, I wonder what that Hot Wheel car is worth these days. So, I went to the internet and looked it up with dollar signs in my mind. Oh yes, we paid $1 for that car back in the early 70s. And today it's worth $2. Wow! You can't tell me that long-term investments don't pay off. I don't know if I could do this. My voice is kind of hoarse right now, but I used to love that old Snoopy the Red Baron song. 10, 20, 30